Hi, I'm John Patitucci, and you're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com with John Liebman.
John Patitucci. Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We're here today with a very, very, very old friend, John Patitucci. How you doing, John?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's great. Great to be here in Detroit, actually.
Welcome to Detroit. You're in town for the 38th Annual Detroit Jazz Festival. Yeah, welcome. You know, speaking of old friend, though, I just want to tell you, I was thinking the other day about the time I came to your house in L.A. with my infant son. He was probably about 5 months old.
Wow.
And you know how old he is now?
He's how old?
He's 30.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
we're getting old, folks.
Yeah,
You know.
but we're still here.
Still here.
And we're still grooving, especially you.
I want to tell you a funny story about that. I went to see Pino Palladino play with John Mayer because we met each other in 1986. I met him when I was first on the road with Chick, and the first time we went to Ronnie Scott's in London. And so he got my family and I in to see him play with John Mayer recently out in California. We were having a vacation, and we went out there. And we were joking around in the dressing room before the show, and I said, well, Pino, they haven't replaced us yet. We were cracking up. So we feel fortunate to still be working as much as we are.
Yeah, well, you both still have a lot of energy, and I saw you with Wayne, and I saw you with your own group, the Electric Guitar Quartet. Yeah. I haven't been to the Detroit Jazz Fest in a few years. I'm usually at the Warwick Base Camp in Markneukirchen, Germany.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you were a professor there a couple of years, yeah. But they invited me. I wasn't able to make it this year, and I'm seeing all the stuff on Facebook from Ralph Armstrong and everybody else. Oh, it's so great to be here, and I was disappointed. But then I thought, settling for Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock and John Schofield and Stanley Clark and Benny Golson, not so bad. Yeah, so welcome. We had a couple of great interviews on for BassPlayersOnly.com. They were both phone interviews, so it's great to be here in person and in video and live and in color and all of that. But so we got the whole story about Brooklyn and growing up and then going to L.A. and then how your career got started, and with Chick from the gig with Victor Feldman. You said Chick used to have these Valentine's Day parties, and you made note of mentioning the desserts that he had, which I thought.
Oh yeah, because his wife Gail, she loved desserts, and they would make healthy desserts and some that were not so healthy. Chocolate things and cheesecakes and all kind of.
Do they still have those parties? Can you get me in?
They moved away. They don't live in L.A. anymore, but
you could have dessert anywhere.
They had a beautiful house in L.A. It was like a beautiful, incredible place. Anyway, and also I played a jam session with Chuck Mangione that she was playing at. Gail was playing at, and she went home and told him about me. So,
what, Chuck, or was it Gap?
Well, I was in Gap's band, but I was at a jam session at Chuck's house one night. That's when I met Gail.
Gotcha.
Chick's wife. So it was cool. Anyway. So yeah, that was that seems so long ago now. I mean, we were very young in my 20s.
But that was a great story. That's in the first interview. The second interview was all about the Brooklyn album had just come out, and you were playing with the guys that I saw you with yesterday, with Adam Rogers and Steve Cardenas. Is how you pronounce
Cardenas,
it?
Yeah, and we've been playing.
And Brian Blade, of course.
Of course. Whew. Man, Brian's amazing. We been ever since the record came out a couple of years ago. We've managed to do some touring, here and there, and in the midst of all the other stuff I'm doing. And it's a great bunch of guys to be with, traveling too. Just great. It's a very family-oriented thing. Everybody knows each other a long time.
Yeah, I bet you'd have to. I want to ask you something about, I hadn't originally thought of asking you this, but after having seen the first half of the Detroit Jazz Festival this year, I want to ask about your thoughts on the state of jazz, because when one goes to a jazz festival, or when I go to a jazz festival, I expect to hear a fair bit of toe-tapping, head-bopping, finger-snapping music.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a whole lot of that. You know what? Oddly enough, the person that provided the biggest portion of that finger-snapping music was John Schofield, from whom I would have expected it the least. But I saw you with Wayne, and I saw Herbie and some other folks, and there seems to be, I don't know, it's like concepts and mantras, and I was wondering if maybe jazz is becoming more for musicians. There seem to be a lot of musicians and non-musicians, all of whom appreciate it, but that just struck me. It just caught my attention that there wasn't, hey, where's the jazz? Not that I'm saying it's bad, I'm just saying maybe it's changing.
Right. Well, man, I felt like we that's all we do in the guitar quartet is play grooves all day. So I don't think that really applies to the set we played yesterday, because we came out with a swing, we were swinging, and then we went to then we played a lot of groove stuff.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm not saying that's still not part of it. I just expected it to be the majority of the music I would hear at the.
Stuff. There's a ton of stuff happening. Benny Golson is playing.
Yeah.
That's going to be right in there, straight ahead. I think, jazz is something that keeps changing and evolving. And I think there's room for all of it. I'm involved in a lot of different kinds of music. I mean, I played a lot with old musicians and recorded a lot of very straight ahead things as well. I mean, I did 4 records with Hank Jones, and I did Victor Feldman, and I played in acoustic things with Chick and many other players. So I believe in that music, like what you're saying, the swing music and the bebop and post-bop. And that's part of the reason I moved back to New York 21 years ago.
Wow, has it been that long?
Yeah. So I believe in that. But I also believe in all the other things, too. I mean, Wayne Shorter, he did all that stuff, too. I mean, he was part of some very straight-ahead post-bop ensembles with Art Blakey and all that.
But you've been with Wayne for a long time. Would he ever break out, I don't know, Speak No Evil or Witch Hunt?
But we don't play those songs per se, although the last time we were in Detroit, you should have been there, because we played some straight-ahead swinging stuff in the middle of the set. And there was a talk.
You know what? I was.
Yeah, we played.
The one, Gary Burton was here, right? And Chick was here. Was it that year?
I don't know. It was indoors. No, it was indoors it wasn't part of the festival, I don't think. It was indoors at a beautiful, it was Symphony Hall.
Orchestra Hall.
Orchestra Hall, yeah. And
the Max, we call it, named after Max Fisher, who was a big philanthropic donor here.
The funny thing about it was that night that, there was a guy who interviewed us about Wayne's music in the talk tent yesterday, and Danilo and Brian and I, and he brought it up. He said, man, there's something that I know that occurred last time you played a concert with the quartet in the you said the Orchestra Hall, and you guys played some swing tunes, like you actually played some bebop tunes, and the audience freaked out. And he said, but has that ever happened again? And I said, neither before nor since. And I think that has to do with, too, you got to realize Wayne is 84 years old.
Wow.
So for him, he's played a lot of that music in his life, and he is all about innovation and changing the course of music and trying some different things. So does he love that other music any less? No. He loves it. But he has a calling. I think he felt like he was put there to do his thing. So I feel the same way. I still love playing that music too. And and that's why sometimes I would get upset, because you get pigeonholed if you play a lot of different kinds of music. Some people would say, oh yeah, you're playing with Wayne, you guys are playing all that far out music, you still like playing swing? Of course I do. I still play it. And I play in groups. Heck, I live in New York. There's a lot of swinging going on.
I hope my question was received in the spirit in which it was intended. But you just reminded me of something else. I saw you and Chick and Frank Gambale and Dave Weckl and Eric Marienthal at the Royal Oak Music Theater, about 20 miles from here, in 1990. And I remember being very surprised at what I heard, because what I was not expecting was him in the Seventh Galaxy and all the Return to Forever stuff, and that's what you guys opened with.
Yes.
So that was a hoot. I remember you had some kind of shtick where you did some kind of...
Oh, yeah. My daughters, they really give me a hard time about those old... Now with YouTube, it's bad, man. Because they put those... They call them up and go, look at you, Dad, you look silly, And I was like, well, it was the 80s, whatever.
I have kids, too, and that's their job, to make fun of their dads.
But I understand what you're saying. A lot of people have different tastes, but I think there needs to be room, because jazz has always been a music that embraced and mixed with all kinds of music from the world. So it has that ability, and a lot of other musics can't do that at all. They can't mix with anything.
Well, it was good to see that the crowds were as into it. They were honestly more into it than I expected them to be into it, because I'm a musician. I get it. I understand harmony, and so that was good to hear. You mentioned that you're doing a lot of other stuff. Tell us about some of the other things there. What's keeping you busy?
Well, this actual period that I just am completing this weekend is the end of a huge run that started in May. I went out with my electric guitar quartet in May. Then I went out with Wayne with the quartet. Then we did some Wayne orchestral stuff, where it was Wayne plus orchestra, which we're going to do tomorrow here at the festival. Then I went back out with Chick Corea in Europe. Yeah, it was Europe with Chick, and then back with Wayne in Europe, and then
This was all
in
2017?
Yeah, this is since May. And then back again to Europe with Wayne in Europe, and then Chick in the States. Yeah, with the tour with Bella Fleck and all that too. And then I came home and we did, then I had a week off, and then I came here.
A whole week, huh?
Yeah.
Probably didn't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah, man. And then I'm also doing classical projects. I do commissions. I write pieces for the bass and string quartet. I did a commission with a group in Philadelphia.
But classical is not necessarily just upright. You had mentioned there was some stuff for six-string electric.
Well, yeah, there was
one particular project anyway.
Some years back, I wrote a couple of things for six-string bass and orchestra. One has never been recorded or performed with a major orchestra yet. We did it with the kids at Berkeley School Orchestra, but then I expanded the piece. That's for six-string bass and bigger orchestra. But I had done something for string orchestra and six-string bass called The Theme and Variations, which was on line by line. But I've been writing. Marc Anthony Turge, the famous British composer, wrote me a
Scorched
beautiful piece. Well, he wrote Scorched, and he also wrote this thing called Prayer Out of Stillness.
Jumping in with tangents all over.
That's true. That's how I met him, through John Schofield in the Scorched piece, and then he was kind enough to write me a concerto, which I did with, Scottish Chamber, Swedish Chamber Orchestra, London Symphony Strings. I played it and St. Louis Symphony. I played it with a lot of orchestras for a while, and that piece was 4 movements, 2 on acoustic, 2 six-string electric with string orchestra. That was incredible fun. Scary, for me to be doing all that and switching gears. So I'm still managed to do forays into that too. I was also doing some stuff with Jimmy Green earlier this year, the great tenor player. That was some swinging stuff and some Brazilian stuff too with him. I made a Brazilian trio record that's only on vinyl. This Nouvelle Records thing. And that was with Yotam Silberstein, amazing guitar player from Israel who lives in New York, and Rogerio Boccato, who is originally from Sao Paulo, who's been living in New York for a long time. That was a beautiful project, just trio. Some acoustic, some electric. Only Brazilian composers. Some beautiful pieces of music that we did. That's one of those things where there's a special boutique vinyl company, Nouvelle. Beautiful, beautiful artwork, cover, beautiful stuff. It's a tricky thing because it's a subscription thing. You have to buy 5 records. There's a bunch of artists that get released. So some people were upset that they couldn't just buy the one record. But the nice thing about that deal is it's a modern kind of deal where after 2 years, the deal reverts back to me, and I can, if I want to press CDs, I can do it. That was exciting because the music is extraordinary. Jobim, Chico Buarque, Milton Nascimento, all favorite composers of mine.
Fascinating. Tell me a little bit about your equipment.
Right now, I have the 2 latest Yamahas that are beautiful that I'm playing on the electric side of things. There's that big semi-hollow version, big semi-hollow bass that's on the cover of Brooklyn. That's huge.
Okay. Sitting on the steps in front of the building.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's great sounding, but I started not to travel with that because it's super heavy and I didn't want it to get hurt. And also, I had to wear a double strap and have a special groove gear strap, made one of those Damien Erskine things.
Yeah.
Worked out great. And so I had him build a lighter version, which you saw me play yesterday, which is a neat instrument. I love that instrument. And then I was also playing an older prototype of a 5-string that Yamaha made that they never marketed in the States. They marketed it in Japan. It was like a BB LTD 5-string.
Okay.
Great. They have some new stuff now. They're going to send me a new 5-string that they're really excited about. So we'll see.
What about strings?
Did Ario for years. Always did Ario. Been using the nickel wound, round wound.
You told me something yesterday. You said
I
that
use a high C as a half round. For a while I was using half rounds on half of the bass, and then I changed.
When was the last time you picked up a 4-string?
I have to admit, I use them sometimes in recordings, and
you still have that lag bass? Was that a French bass?
No, but you know what? Recently I got, which I don't play out live, but I have 2 old pre-CBS Fenders too.
Really?
Yes, my mentor got them for me, and there's a 65 P bass and a 64 jazz bass.
Wow.
So, but I don't play those out.
Okay.
I'm a Yamaha guy, man.
Yeah, I know. But
besides, you can't have an old vintage Fender 6-string. They don't exist.
Right. Well, I wasn't asking Yamaha versus Fender. I was asking 5 or 6-string versus 4-string. When my first book came out, my first book came out in 1992, Funk Bass.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write the foreword, the hottest, most high-profile slapper in the world, and I got him. And his name is John Patitucci.
Oh, my goodness.
And I thank you for that. But I saw you play, well, obviously with Wayne you were playing upright, but in your thing, your electric guitar thing, that's a whole different kind of thing. But I haven't seen you do much slapping lately.
I'd still do it, and I was doing it with Chick on the reunion. We were playing
Light Years.
The
offbeats.
And I was slapping it actually, and I was hanging out with Victor Wooten on that tour with Bella Fleck, and he showed me some new things that I'm working on that are really cool. Now you know how I was. I mean, I didn't really consider myself, Marcus to me was in my generation the cat, But I did love, and I still do love to play it, and I think I'm a little better at it than I used to be. But I never really got into the super,
double thumbing,
soloistic, all that. I never really got a little bit. I didn't consider that my voice. I considered that part of who I was because I'm an R&B guy first.
Right.
But I felt like there were so many guys that owned that more than I did, that were just amazing, like Marcus and Victor and people, and well, of course, Larry Graham and Louis Johnson before that. But I was honored and surprised that you chose me. But I did one thing that I did do when I was doing that stuff a lot was I didn't overplay, so I got a lot of gigs doing it, sessions and stuff, because they knew I was going to play the groove, and that's what I could handle.
Are you listening, folks? That's what's important.
Yeah, and I got a lot of gigs because I wouldn't overplay.
Lee Sklar always says, "Serve the song."
Yeah, well, and luckily for the producers with the slap stuff too, I couldn't overplay because I didn't have those kind of like triple thumbing chops anyway. But all that stuff.
What about the future? I mean, you mentioned some things that you're working on that are coming up. Is there anything that you've just always wanted to do and just haven't gotten around to yet?
Well, yeah, there's different things. My wife says I got to do a record of duets with singers, which I would love to do. I want to do that. There's also a chamber music record. I've written a lot of chamber music. I'd like to put it out on a record.
Well, your wife is a cellist, right?
Yeah, she
Does
is.
she still play?
She does, yes.
Well, there you go. There's a start to a chamber ensemble.
Well, I mean, she's on all the stuff I did on my earlier records. Anytime there's a string quartet, she's playing cello. But there's more stuff of that I'd like to pursue. There's a lot of little things I'd like to do. I mean, I always think there's always 10 million record projects I'd like to do. I'd like to do another straight ahead record with maybe a quartet sometime, or maybe even a little bit expanded with a 3-horn thing, and just try to write in some interesting ways for that, because I still love that, that sound, So I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better, and there's still things I'd like to do with particular musicians too. Edgar Meyer years ago and I talked about doing something Victor Wooten and I have talked about doing a duet thing. Heck, I was talking to Schofield this time about maybe sometime doing a duet thing. You know, there's a lot of people that I love, and they love their playing, and I'd like to spend some more time playing together. Of course, Danilo and I would love to do a duet thing too. We had a thought some years ago to do a duet thing, and then also do it duet, but also have expanded like strings or whatever, and write for what we do, but then also, you know, a chamber group too.
I remember Rob Wasserman had he had solo, then he had a whole album of duets.
Yeah.
Then he had an album of trios. I don't think he did quartets, but that was, he had singers, he had different instrumentalists, and
I think it's great. I have a lot of singers that I like to work with, that I would like to work with. I have a wish list, but you know, unfortunately, some of the singers that that shaped my musical concept are gone, like Donny Hathaway.
Yeah.
He was one of my absolute heroes. But there are great singers still. You know, there's a lot of great singers around. Stevie's still alive and kicking and wailing.
Yeah.
But
not too far from here, actually.
Yeah. And then, you know, other people too. And I just whenever somebody asks me, I can't remember all the stuff, and then probably about a half an hour from now, I'll have about 10 things that I wanted to tell you.
Well, this is the third interview. There's nothing to say we can't do a fourth interview. Come back to Detroit anytime. This is, by the way, the Detroit River behind us, and those buildings back there.
That's Canada.
That's Canada.
See the flag?
Did you realize that Detroit is the only place in the United States where you have to travel south to get to Canada?
Somebody told me that yesterday, actually. Yes.
The things you learn on forbasspleyersonly.com.
See?
There you go. Well, John, it's always a pleasure catching up with you, seeing you play, hearing you play, and hearing about all the projects and all the stuff that you have coming up. Please keep us posted, and with all that time on the road, I hope you'll still find time to do some of those projects, all of those projects, and
we'll see.
Keep it up, and we will keep enjoying it.
Thank you, brother.
Always a pleasure, my old friend.
Man, yes, good to see you.
With our good
You're
friend,
looking good.
John Patitucci. Thank you. You're looking
All
good,
right.
too. On location at the 38th Annual Detroit International Jazz Festival. I'm John Liebman. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.